stuck in my copy of Tron Evolution and started playing it, and it plays a lot like some other games that I've played recently, and it got me to thinking, if I could go back and experience 5 games again for the first time for any console, like a magic fairy came down and said, okay, I can erase these 5 games from your memory, you'll have no memory of ever playing them, what 5 games would you choose?
Hello folks, Rob MaximumRD back once again, and I really like that question. So I'm doing this video response. I know video responses suck nowadays, thanks a lot YouTube, but still, as he mentioned, you can do a video response, just let him know. As a matter of fact, link to this original video is in the description. Please check it out, listen to his responses because they're really good. As well, check out his channel. Great unboxings, video game discussion, anything to do with video games in general. Check out SANDAMTOD'S channel. Subscribe, say hi, tell him Rob MaximumRD sent you. These are my choices, by the way. I'm going to give you some images on each game, just using the camera, and speak a little bit about why this particular title would be one of my 5 choices. And yeah, let's begin. Alrighty, so many of you that know me won't be surprised by these choices at all, but let's begin with Castlevania. Konami's amazing Castlevania series started way back on the 8-bit Nintendo. Did it start on the 8-bit Nintendo? Was there some obscure older version, possibly on MSX or something like that? I'm not sure. But most people will recognize Castlevania from the original Nintendo 8-bit series, moving on to, of course, other platforms, from the PC Engine, CD-ROM, to, of course, PlayStation, etc. But the thing is, for me, in my mind, if I go back and re-experience one particular Castlevania title, it would be Symphony of the Night on the original PlayStation. I remember bringing this game home and thinking, hey, you know, this is awesome. I've played the past Castlevanias, 8-bit Nintendo, and on other systems, handhelds, etc. But this was the one for Sony PlayStation, with its amazing soundtrack, CD audio quality, of course beautiful Konami style of animation and artwork, backgrounds, great boss fights, great characters, that magnificent voice acting. What is a man? And all that, just so memorable. And for those of you, you know, I don't want to give it away, but let's just say the first time I realized that, when I thought the game was nearly at an end and I was starting to be saddened by the fact that all this glorious gameplay was going to be over fairly soon, and then something just happens in the game. Most of you will know what I'm talking about if you've played it already, and it just makes you realize, oh my god, it's not even close to ending. It's going to go on. It's going to continue. I get to enjoy this game for so much longer. And for me, that was an awesome, memorable moment in gaming. I just loved. So yeah, Castlevania Symphony of the Night on the original PlayStation. Choice number 1. Choice number 2, Zelda Link to the Past on the Super Nintendo. Awesome game, beautiful musical score, great graphics, of course, with the power of the 16-bit Nintendo system, Super Nintendo. And of course, I had played previous Zeldas, the 8-bit Zeldas. I even like Zelda 2 on the 8-bit Nintendo. But truly, I admit, plugging this game for the first time into the Super Nintendo, the whole opening sequence and Link waking up and heading out, and everything was just so beautiful in the game. Weather effects, rain, the forest, entering the forest area, and just so well designed, the overworld, and just amazing. Beautiful game. Non-stop adventure, fun, finding secrets in the game. Just great overall. It's a classic, and deservedly so. Super Nintendo's Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. Definitely a game I would love to play over fresh for the first time. Number 3, Resident Evil. No surprise here to a lot of you, as survival horror is my favorite genre of game, and the original Resident Evil on the PlayStation, just mind-blowing, brought survival horror to a whole new level. Yes, there were previous entries from Alone in the Dark, but I think everyone will agree that Capcom brought it to a whole new level with the Resident Evil franchise. And on the PlayStation, using its it wasn't the 3D engine. It was a 3D game, but it had static backgrounds. So basically, your 3D textured characters would walk over painted static backgrounds to give the PlayStation an effect as if it had better graphical capabilities. But it also introduced tank controls, as they're called. Many people hated that. It threw me off at first, but I adjusted to it rather quickly, and it never really bothered me as much as it seems to bother a lot of people. It's definitely something that you adapt to, but once you get used to that style of play and movement, it didn't bother me at all. And it didn't bother me in later sequels of the game. I did like that in later versions. I think it was in Resident Evil 3, or it might have been 2 already. No, I think it was 3, where they added a quick turnaround feature, which did alleviate some of the control issues. But overall, I love the original Resident Evil on the original PlayStation. From the first time I went in that hallway and this zombie turns around, stands up and starts walking toward you. And of course, for me, this first Resident Evil game was the first game that gave me a massive heart attack. No, it almost gave me a massive heart attack, with a great jump scare and a few other jump scares in the game. And I hadn't believed, prior to playing this, I didn't believe a video game could actually give me a jump scare. And ever since it did, I've been hooked on survival horror games. And so I have to give props to the one that did it first on the original PlayStation, Resident Evil. Next up, Resident Evil 4 on the GameCube. I picked this up for the GameCube originally, played through it. It was a much different style of game. Some would say a very welcome change in the control scheme. Different camera angle, more of a, most of the missions it was kind of an over-the-shoulder first-person view type thing. I'll show you an image to give you an idea, like that there. Except when you, of course, were playing the escort missions, which really sucked. Does anybody ever like escort missions? But this had the escort mission for the president's daughter in the game. And it was something different, but to me, escort missions in video games are like Jar Jar Binks in Star Wars movies. You just wish it wasn't there. But other than that, it was a major bump up in graphics, of course. The GameCube graphic capability was awesome. As this was also displayed in the remake of the original Resident Evil on the GameCube, which just looked absolutely stunning, especially for its time. And I was tempted to give that as one of my 5 picks, the remake of the original Resident Evil. But really, that was just a graphical overhaul with some added levels and a few changes. So I don't know. I don't think it deserves that to be on the list. If it was a list of, 10 or 15 games perhaps, I would probably add it to the list. But as it stands, no, I didn't want to add it. So Resident Evil 4 on the GameCube, a change in gameplay style. It wasn't really zombies. It was more like villagers hosting evil creatures within them, which made them very violent sort of thing, but not your traditional zombies that are, walking around at a slow pace or anything like that. And some good boss enemies, and again, just really great graphics. It was different enough from the original Resident Evil games that it made it exciting and new and fresh, but not so different that, unlike the latest so-called Resident Evil games, like 5 and 6, are they on to 6 now? I don't even know. But basically, they've just become first-person shooters with a Resident Evil skin on top. And that I don't like. I keep hearing rumors that they really do want to get back to the roots of Resident Evil survival horror. And I really hope they do at some point, because I know they're trying to cater to this, Call of Duty generation who's into the first-person shooters, but just throwing a skin on top of a FPS and changing the names to the cast of Resident Evil does not make it a Resident Evil game. So hopefully we'll see a return to roots for Capcom in the Resident Evil series. And the next game, this is a different kind of survival horror. If Resident Evil is, say, I don't know, the Exorcist of horror games, then I would say Silent Hill would be the Omen of survival horror games. It's more about the perceived horror. It's not really jump out at you, scare jump type of horror. It's more of the corner of your eye, what's around the corner, fear of the unknown, and playing with your mind, psychological type horror. That's not to say that there isn't monsters to be found in Silent Hill. There certainly are. But it's not about zombies. It's about, usually you end up finding out it's really all about the main character and their own personal demons. And I find that very interesting. But Silent Hill 1 on the original PlayStation, when I first popped it in, I was expecting it to be pretty much, another Resident Evil type of game. Bold for Konami to use the actual 3D engine of the original PlayStation instead of static backgrounds, to go for a more colorful, beautiful look. It's not to say Silent Hill wasn't beautiful its own way, but because it used the 3D engine, which is quite dated by today's standard of the PlayStation, low-res textures, shaky images. I mean, as the 3D camera moved around and your environment changed angles, everything seemed to have this shakiness to it. But I dare say with the Silent Hill games, that almost added to the effect. All the fog to cover up the lack of draw distance, because let's face it, that's what it was really, and just a weird, quirky, shivering look to textures and environments. I think it kind of added to the spookiness, because I wouldn't have believed that a 3D game on the PlayStation could really provide you with an eerie or spooky environment, but of course Silent Hill managed to do exactly that. As I said, it really plays with your mind, this type of horror. A great, awesome soundtrack. That whole opening intro, driving down the road and almost, hitting a child, or thinking he's going to hit a child, and waking up in the town of Silent Hill was just incredible. Really cool game. Much different than Resident Evil, but a cool series on its own. And so that's 5 titles. I'm going to throw in one more, though. I probably could have easily come up with 10. But honorable mention, I'm going to throw in, yes, another Resident Evil game. But this time, Resident Evil Code Veronica on the Dreamcast. Because this one, using the Dreamcast 3D hardware, which was incredible for its time for a home-based console, it managed to have the same effect of having detailed, decent-looking backgrounds, yet instead of them being static paintings, they were actually 3D hardware-generated environment that you can interact more with. Thanks to the power of the Dreamcast, you could have, multiple enemies on screen, good graphics, better textures, of course, than the original PlayStation, and still have good backgrounds and environments, all generated by the Dreamcast hardware. They didn't have to rely on static painting backgrounds to overlay their 3D characters on top of it. The Dreamcast was powerful enough to generate it all in real time, and it was awesome. So, honorable mention, Code Veronica. Love the characters, love the game, and the storyline. Just a great Dreamcast Resident Evil. Well, at the time exclusive. I think it actually came out later on the PlayStation 2. Might have added a few features, but I originally played it and experienced it on the Dreamcast. And if I were to do it again all over, I would like to do it on the Dreamcast. So that's it. 5 selections. Castlevania Symphony of the Night, Zelda Link to the Past, original Resident Evil PlayStation, and Resident Evil 4 on the GameCube, as well as Silent Hill on the PlayStation, and honorable mention, Code Veronica. Those are my choices. I would love to experience them all over again because I've played a lot of games since. Haven't finished many. I don't generally tend to finish games these days. I finished all of these games that I mentioned. And I really don't... I can't say that many games that I've played ever since any of these have given me that same wow factor, that same amazement or sense of awe. Sure, you get beautiful graphics and things like that, but I don't know. A game is more than a sum of its parts. Who knows? Hopefully I'll be able to come up with more games to add to the list as time goes on, and I have more experiences that I can recall as fondly as these games. So that's it. Rob MaximumRD out. Once again, check out SANDAMTOD'S channel. Links in the description. Bye for now.